This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to AgriFocus, the podcast from Agriland in association with AXA Insurance that look in depth at some of the topical issues of the day. I'm Breifne O'Brien, and today I'm joined by Mark Waters from the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, or the ICBF, and we will be discussing the National Genotyping Programme. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, I suppose your farming background and your role with the ICBF?
Yeah, thanks, Breifne. So I got into farming through my aunt and uncle's farm. They have a mixed pedigree Charolais and dairy herd. So every holiday, every chance I got, and even after I went to study agricultural science in UCD, I worked there for full time for about a year. And then I took a job down in ICBF then in a graduate program in 2015. So over 10 years now there with ICBF.
And Mark, pedigree Charolais and milking cows, I suppose it's a bit of an unusual combination. Which of the two would you say was your preference or is your preference?
I found both interesting. I suppose the passion really on that farm from a breeding perspective was probably always shaded by the pedigree Charolais, yeah, for sure. They're both. I find kind of all agriculture interesting.
Good stuff. And you're also a capable singer too, I've been reliably informed, Mark.
That's right. I have been known to sing a bit in my time, all right, yeah.
Well, we're not going to ask you to sing today, you'll be glad to hear. I suppose we're here just to talk about the National Genotyping Programme. And I suppose, Mark, can we start off, maybe tell us a little bit about what is the National Genotyping Programme, or the NGP, and what's its purpose in the industry?
Yeah, so the NGP is a world-leading project. It's a collaborative programme between the Department of Agriculture, obviously farmers themselves, and industry. And basically it's with the intention of fully genotyping the entire bovine herd in Ireland. So if we were to achieve that, we would be a world first. So as I said, it's collaborative. So the department are putting money in, and also industry, meat industry Ireland, dairy industry Ireland, and then the farmers. So it's an even...
So it's a world first, I suppose. It's a first now. Obviously, it's a work in progress as well. But what would be the benefit of genotyping our herd here in Ireland? What will it benefit, I suppose, to the industry, and then most importantly to farmers on the ground, Mark?
Yeah, so look, at an industry level, especially if we do get to a fully 100% genotype, there's loads of benefits. All of the parentage errors, all of the animals that are currently in the herd with no sire recorded, as much as 30 or 40% of dairy beef calves, for example, traditionally are registered without any sire being recorded. So in terms of the accuracy of our breeding programs, traceability wise, we'd be head and shoulders above any other country in the world in terms of the traceability of our meat and dairy products. And there's all sorts of ancillary benefits then around, things like cattle theft and all sorts of different other benefits as well. But the main ones, like I said, are improving our rate of genetic gain.
So how long is it since it's been first rolled out, Mark? And, how has it been going? How many herds have signed up? How many calves have been genotyped? How is it going?
Yeah, so it was initially launched in 2023. We took in about 10,500 herds in the first year, and then we reopened it again then in last year, and we took in another 4,500 herds or so. So we were up to about 15,000 herds before we reopened it again now this year. So far we have over 1,500 herds now have joined again this year. So in terms of the national herd, in terms of reaching that goal of 100% genotyping, there's now over 45% of the national cow herd genotyped, and that's without genotyping, all the cows and heifers in this new herds that have joined in this intake.
Is that dairy and suckler?
That's across the whole, dairy and suckler. So there's about 39% of all the dairy cows nationally now genotyped, and there's a little over 65% of all the beef herds, all the beef cows, genotyped. So the beef herds are ahead actually, because they've had schemes like the Beef Data and Genomics Programme, and then the Suckler Carbon Efficiency, or SCEP, which is there now, which is taken over. So the beef herds have been genotyping quite heavily. There's a 70% genotyping requirement for SCEP. So they've had a head start, from those schemes. But the dairy herds are catching up rapidly now with the National Genotyping Programme.
And I suppose for a dairy farmer, what benefits does the data they will get from genotyping their breeding herd, what benefits will it deliver on, I suppose, the dairy production side, and then of course with selling their dairy beef calves also?
Yeah, so the benefits are very similar really. It's aimed at both dairy and suckler herds. The first thing that happens when herds join is they get their entire breeding herd genotype free of charge. So that's cows, heifers, yearling heifers, heifer calves, and any stock bulls in the herd, done for free. So particularly for large dairy herds, that can equate to quite a large amount of free genotyping. It's normally €18 a head is the cheapest you can get it done. And then each year then they do the calves at birth. So the benefits of that then are improved accuracy on their existing breeding values. So whether it's your stars or EBIs, they'll get genomic values on their existing herd of cows. So from a dairy point of view, there's a big focus now in the last couple of years on sex semen, and a lot of money and expense going into sex semen. So having more accurate EBIs on your cows will often re-rank them. So you'll be sure you're spending your money on the right proportion of your cows to put the sex semen, for example. So moving on from that, then you have the benefits are then that you're catching all your parentage issues. So typically speaking, herds run at about 17% parentage issues. Can be even as much as 5 or 6% in terms of dam, and even the wrong sex is recorded by accident in about 1.5% of cases. So all of that's picked up and fixed before the passport is issued for each animal. So that cuts out, future paperwork trying to fix errors or accidental inbreeding, putting sires back to daughters that you didn't realise, all of that sort of thing.
So it can also correct the gender of the calf as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So we can pick up whether it's a male or a female. So again, well enough, compact calving, lots of cows calving the same time. It's easy even just to tick the wrong drop down on an app or on the Ag Food website and select the wrong sex or read the wrong value out of your notebook or whatever. So these mistakes are human, they happen, but they're there and they're fixed really easily then for the farmer with this program.
And then, so I suppose, Mark, the way it happens is with all the existing animals in the herd, all the breeding animals, we say, there's a third tag that goes into them, but all subsequent progeny is just the second tag takes. Can you talk us through maybe how that works?
Yeah, so herds who join the NGP then have access to what are called double tissue tags. So that means basically that the 2 calf tags that you have to put in the calf anyway, both ears leave a sample, not just the BVD one, which is traditional. So that means you've no extra tags or no hair cards or anything to take samples from your calves. So that one job you have to do anyway is leaving you both samples. So again, that's a big win for SCEP herds in particular, because they have to do 70% each year of their reference number in terms of genotyping, which also often means bringing in more mature animals or, slightly older calves that have gone out to the land already, gather them all back up, bring them in, and then you have a third tag in the ear and all the rest of it. So, that can save a lot of labour, and it's a lot safer and easier to tag calves at birth. And as I said, then you're integrating that sample into the registration process. So while your passport is a few days later coming, all your parentage errors are checked fixed, and then they get their genomic evals on your calves within a couple of weeks of them being registered. So huge advantages there.
And then I suppose that brings us on then to our next question, Mark. Is there much additional paperwork to farmers who sign up for the National Genotyping Programme?
Not really. As I said, they're tagging the calves anyway. So unfortunately, we can't test both the BVD and the DNA in the same lab. So there is 2 envelopes to post. There's an extra stamp or whatever involved when you're posting away. But otherwise, you register your calves online as you would normally, and then the parentage and sex errors are corrected automatically. So there's no need to go in and review and accept changes or anything like that. And then your passport or your blue card comes out in the post automatically. So other than, I suppose, the biggest difference to farmers at the peak springtime is just routine, because you're adding, typically the sample takes 4 days in the lab. That was very consistently the average. So because you're adding 4 days into the process and maybe a couple of days postage, if you are a little bit tight in space for calves, you do have to be a little bit more on the ball in terms of tagging the calves younger and posting your samples a bit more regularly. But in terms of actual paperwork, there's no real extra paperwork.
Yeah. And then, so obviously then the turnaround time from, say, the sample goes into the post box until the farmer gets the cards back, what are we saying that's around? Is it 4 days, generally speaking, or it arrives in the lab?
So from when it arrives in the lab, 5 is kind of our maximum cut-off. 4 days has been very much on average, even as low as 3 in some cases, and that was very consistent over the whole year. So far this year we'd have tested over 750,000 samples, and in the peak spring period you would have had back-to-back weeks in February where we were pushing up on 100,000 samples a week, and even in the height of that level of volume, the averages were very, very consistently 4 days. The biggest variation tends to be, the length of time it takes the sample to get to the lab. So whether, farmers wait a bit till they have a bunch of calves to tag them, and so the older ones are a little bit older, or maybe they're not posting as regularly, or unfortunately maybe it gets a little bit longer in the post than you would hope, but that type of thing. Generally speaking, the lab is very consistent. And look, we know that that's a big anxiety, especially for dairy farmers. So we have lots of fail-safes built in there. So if the sample is delayed for any reason in the lab, or we fail to get a result from the sample, we automatically allow the passport to go out, and then the farmer can choose to go back and sample again or wait for the result if they wish. But that way, 1 or 2 samples out of their 100 calves that maybe don't hit a snag don't end up causing them, stress or holding on to calves longer than they want to.
And of course, the big pressure time is probably from February to the spring calving season, really, the duration.
Yeah, look, it's a challenge I think a lot of our industry face. So we have the massive benefit here in Ireland of being so capable of growing high quality grass. But then that makes us a seasonal system, whether you're looking at forage management or housing or any of those things. And it's no different with this, because of the spring calving and herds, pushing that 90% 6-week calving rate. It does mean then that the glut of our, 2.6 million calves or whatever is born each year are coming in that tight window between, say, the last week of January and, the end of March.
And I suppose one of the key points as well is that the National Genotyping Programme really, it offers a discount on farmers who want to genotype their breeding herd. So ultimately, they can genotype all their herd for the cost of genotyping just their breeding herd without support payment, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, genotyping is normally €18 per animal. So again, it comes to thousands of euros worth of free genotyping, especially for the larger dairy herds. And then even the calves, then the rough cost per calf is about €6 per calf, €4 directly for the lab, and then the other 2, for the fact that the tag is a little bit more expensive. And as I said, you have a second envelope to post away. But even at that, €6, that's a third of the cost. The other 2/3 are made up by the department and industry equally. But that's still a third of the cost, so it's still a huge saving in terms of genotyping.
And I suppose smaller scale suckler farms, Mark, what benefits does it offer there? We know that there's great benefits obviously for larger scale farms for keeping track of, the parentage of the progeny, but what benefits can it offer on smaller scale suckler farms?
Yeah, so I suppose the big ones there's over 16,000 herds or 16,500 herds in the Suckler Carbon Efficiency Programme. They have to take 70% samples each year. So the samples that they take at birth for the NGP count as those samples for SCEP. So that's a huge job, labour saving for them not to have to get animals back in later. And then they're also getting genomic evaluations within a couple of weeks of the calf being registered. So again, as early as possible, they're getting to know which of those heifer calves are eligible, whether they're selling them or keeping them, which of them are actually eligible for schemes. And, pedigree, a lot of those small suckler herds are at least partially pedigree as well. And a lot of those pedigree societies now require genotyping before they'll give the pedigree cert. So again, the sample does for those things. There's other benefits as well, like we have major genes now added in, like myostatins and pole Celtic. So again, if you're, maybe trying to avoid or match up pairings, for different ones of those genes, you can now tell which of your herd are carriers or single copy carriers, etc. So there's loads of information there for those herds.
And we're seeing a trend now as well, Mark, with the more resilient dairy calf to beef herds, where they're looking for calves with commercial beef values. And I know this year that there's been, an exceptional trade for all types of calves across the board, but we've also seen that not every year is as good for the calf trade as this year. And in, them more challenging years, having the CBV available on your calves is always a good selling point too, and it gives farmers a good indication of what type of calves they're buying, especially farmers producing the higher CBV calves.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something we've been working on for a long time. You have the Dairy Beef Index, which obviously is there to try and help dairy farmers use higher beef merit bulls on their herd without sacrificing too much on their calving and their gestation. And then, the reward of that decision then should be higher CBV values on their calves. So again, another benefit of NGP, if you're selling your calves in your mart, the CBV doesn't appear on the board unless the calf is genotyped. And that's to provide a level of surety for the buyer, that the animal is what they think it is. The sire is verified, or the parents are verified, and there's a genomic element in that CBV value. So again, if you're selling most of your calves through the mart, that extra information for the buyer is going to add value to the programme.
Yeah. And then looking to the future of the National Genotyping Programme, there's a lot more, I suppose, there's plans in place there to do a lot more with the data that's going to be coming in. What other future benefits, could the National Genotyping Programme deliver for herds in Ireland, breeding herds in particular?
Yeah, so these technologies are only growing all the time. So a benefit that was launched early this year was GenoCells. So for dairy herds, that service allows dairy herds to establish which cows are contributing the most in terms of somatic cell count with a single bulk tank sample. So instead of having to milk record the whole herd, it does tie in with milk recording, but for an individual test, they can tell which cows are contributing. So that's one example. And like the major genes, say on the beef side, there is things coming down the line all the time on that front as well. So on the dairy side, you have things like lethal recessives, for example. So certain genes that we know cause maybe fertility issues, abortions, or stillbirths, or deformed calves, that type of thing. So we'd be able to more accurately avoid carriers and safely keep them in the herd without running into those issues. So all sorts of technologies like that.
And then in relation to myostatin, I suppose, what are you looking at there, and linking the National Genotyping Programme into that?
Yeah, so So myostatins are generally linked with things like Dublin muslin, and then inversely, then they can contribute to calving difficulty. Depends. There's lots of different genes, and some of them are more prevalent in different breeds. It's complicated enough, but I mean, it all paints a picture about the carcass merit of the animal and the calving difficulty of the animal. So, and it's a kind of, I suppose, it's an added thing for those herds who are maybe paying a bit more attention to those traits. They can get them from the same sample they're taking from their calf at birth.
So what do farmers have to do if they want to sign up, and is application still open, Mark?
Yeah, applications are still open for the moment. So to sign up to the National Genotyping Programme, herds can either log into their ICBF account and join up there, or they can send us back a sign-up form. So most herds will have received a sign-up form in the post, or they can give us a call and request a form out if they prefer to do it that way. They will need to fill in their bank details just for that €4 I mentioned. That's done by direct debit once you order your double tissue tags. But other than that, that's effectively it. The only other real requirement is the system does rely on electronic registrations. If you're I suppose if you're unable to switch away from the paper, unfortunately, for the moment, it won't suit you. But those are the only two real. Have at least one calf born in the herd and be able to submit the registration online. They're the only two.
And there is support lines there from ICBF to help farmers with that process?
Yeah, absolutely. They can email us. So we have an email address there, query@icbf.com. And our Herd Plus line is 023 8820 452. So we'd absolutely welcome, generally speaking, if we can get somebody on the phone and give them the time to explain the programme properly. 9 times out of 10 they're positive going away and they're eager to join up. So absolutely, we'd encourage anybody who's even remotely thinking about it to give us a ring if they think they want more information.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for on today's episode of AgriFocus. Thank you for listening, and thanks to our guest today, Mark Waters from the ICBF. Please rate and review this podcast to help us spread the word, and share it with anyone you think might like to listen. Until next time, goodbye and take care.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.